Welcome to English for Engineers. I'm your host, Olivia Augustin. Join me on my podcast as I dig deep into all things technical English, business English, and international business communication to bring you a lifetime of knowledge in a digestible format. Hello friends, fellow engineers, and the occasional word nerd who is listening in. So what is today's episode all about? We're gonna talk about language input and why it is vital to ask for help. Why do we do that? Because I want you to become confident, and without asking for help, we cannot make any progress. And I'm giving you a couple of tips how you can incorporate little routines into your daily life. And it's really important that you do that. And I know that's not always easy. And when I say I know, that's exactly what I mean, because it does cost me a lot of energy to create new habits. And even if I'm doing something for quite a while, the moment I interrupt the habit, whatever that might be, I have a hard time to get back in the saddle, even if it's something that I love doing. So by providing you with a proper why you should create or develop a certain habit, I hope that it's easier for you to really do it. And all those little actions are so important because it's the only thing that will help us to make progress. But first, I want to tell you a little story. The day after recording my first podcast episode, I was on a call with one of my engineers and he asked me a question. He saw my fancy microphone in the background and he asked, "Do you sing in your free time?" I do not. I do sing, but I don't record myself singing and then listen to my own audio. That would be weird. Anyhow, I told him about my new project and that I'd been thinking about producing a podcast for years. And his next question kind of surprised me. He asked, "Why?" I said, "What do you mean, why?" And that engineer said, "Do you do it for fun or is it marketing?" And this is a good question. Why did I start a podcast? Why do I put time and effort into something that I put out into the world for free? Why should you do that? So let me tell you a story. For years, I'm telling my clients, or as I call them, my engineers, so that's you, that high quality language input produces high quality output. What does that mean? It means that if you want to improve your written and spoken English, that's language output, you need to consume the English language in written or spoken form, that's language input. You need to read books, listen to English radio stations or podcasts. And guess what? 99% of my clients love podcasts. Maybe because you guys are all super busy and listening to a podcast is something you can do while in the car driving from one project site to another. And language input is one of the main aspects of language learning. But you cannot learn a language just by listening to a podcast, because now and then you need someone who is checking on your language output, on what you're saying, what you're writing, someone who gives you feedback and tips how and where to improve. And language learning needs a variety of activities and methods. And one way of effortlessly combining all these necessary techniques is working with an ESL teacher. ESL is short for English as a Second Language. So whenever my clients listen to me, and unfortunately not all did nor do, they came back after a couple of weeks and told me that they had a hard time finding the right podcast for them. Yes, they found engineering podcasts by the dozen. That's an idiom, it means a lot. But the hosts were English native speakers and they talked way too fast. Or the podcasts were so specific that it was too much in-depth information after an already busy day at the office. And my engineers also tried out podcasts about business communication and about project management with international teams. But then again, there wasn't enough focus on engineering or tech stuff. So here I am telling my engineers that listening to an English podcast is an excellent way to improve their business English and technical English, when in reality they couldn't find a podcast who covers all the topics they need and are interested in. Also, a 60-minute podcast from native speakers for native speakers might be all fun and games, but ain't nobody got time for that. And by the way, it's all fun and games. It's another idiom, and it means something that is really enjoyable and pleasant. So when one can't find a solution, one must become the solution, or something like that, the saying goes. So my clients needed a podcast that is for engineers by engineers, that is about English language learning tips, that is covering business English and business communication, that is talking about the pitfalls of working with an international team, that is explaining technical English, that is exposing them to new vocabulary, that is long enough to cover interesting topics and short enough so you don't lose your concentration. It should be fun and geeky to help you relax afterward, but it should also be profound enough to help you improve. It shouldn't be only blah, blah, blah. And I thought that podcast should also have exciting guest speakers with various backgrounds and accents. Spoiler alert, today there's no guest. You have to do with me. I think that a good podcast should offer downloadable resources. A podcast should broaden your horizon, and it should spark joy for me when doing it and for you when you're listening to it. So, do I aim high? Yes. Do you deserve the best? Also yes. Will every single episode of my podcast be nominated for an award? Probably not. But I will do my very best to give you industry-related language support and cover your need for input in a way that's not boring. So, to answer the question from the beginning, why do I make a podcast? And the answer is because of you and because it's fun. So, that was the why. But I promised you in the beginning that I'm going to share a couple of tips with you today. 5 tips to master technical English as an engineer, to be specific. So when it comes to learning a new language, English is, depending on your mother language, often touted as one of the most confusing and least straightforward languages to comprehend. Why? Because English has been stealing words from several other languages for ages. I'm not going into detail with that. That might be another podcast. And it seems to be easy to learn it in the beginning, but the longer you try, the more you find out that it's not. It can be kind of tricky. And this is particularly true for those learning how to leverage the English language in a professional setting, as technical terms across industries and countries tend to vary dramatically. So when it comes to the construction industry, this is especially true. It's making it difficult to feel confident in your vocabulary and technical English abilities in regard to job site safety, measurements, techniques, and equipment. But as a professional, you already know how important it is to communicate clearly with your coworkers. And that's why I've put together my top 5 tips for helping you master technical English with an engineering focus. Number 1, and for those who listen to my podcast regularly, it might sound familiar. Number 1 tip is master cultural differences. It's so crucial to recognize the cultural differences between English and almost every other language. Whether you're from Europe, from South America, from Asia, or anywhere else, there are a number of elements of the English language and even workplace environment that might be shocking or difficult to master. A few examples, let me see, blah, blah, blah. I have to articulate better I want you to understand me. A few examples include the emphasis on individuality across the English language, which can show up in conversations as directness or assertiveness, and can often feel jolting, that's another word for shocking, to those who are new to the language. I remember a friend of mine moved to the United States. She moved there from Germany, and she walked into a shop and someone said, "Hey, how you doing?" And she started to explain how she's doing, and that lady or that girl working there was just like looking at her like, "Why are you telling me these things? I'm not interested in your private life." So there's a difference between a German "how you doing" and the American "how you doing." The one is just hello, and the other one is really interested in you, how you feel, what you've done the last couple of days. Additionally, American culture, unfortunately, tends to prioritize work over rest, which can come through in conversation and discussions about scheduling, timelines, and more. And being aware of these cultural differences can help you feel prepared as you enter conversations about various topics in the workplace, and will enable you to feel comfortable approaching discussions that involve those elements of cultural differences that your English-speaking colleagues might not even be aware of. If you want to know more about that topic, listen to episode 3 and 4, I think it was, where I was interviewing Amar Sparker, and we called those episodes Lost in Translation, because it's exactly about cultural differences between America and England, for example. Tip number 2, focus on key vocabulary. This tip does work in 2 ways. The first is by helping you feel prepared and confident as you enter a new job, enter a new work environment that relies on a language you did not grow up using. The second way this works is that it will mean the difference between successful and unsuccessful communication at work, and there's nothing I want more than see you succeed. So by identifying relevant vocabulary and centering your language practice, your learning practice around that group of words, you can create confidence in your abilities to communicate while simultaneously mastering those key terms that will be used throughout the day, again and again and again in conversations. And this is a win-win, because confidence is key when it comes to language learning, to practicing, and to utilizing that new language. And utilizing is just a fancy word for using stuff. In order to, let's say, create a list of your key vocabulary, of your the words that you need all the time, the most important words, you want to do some research or check with a diligent technical language teacher, c'est moi, to identify those phrases and terms that align with your job responsibilities and are really relevant to your industry. And once you have created that master list for yourself, again, you want to focus on those words in your practice in order to become familiar with those terms that will appear most commonly in communication at work. My tip number 3, don't be afraid to ask for help. Let me repeat that. Do not be afraid to ask for help. Again, this applies in 2 major ways. Firstly, it is important to remember that most people have patience and understanding when it comes to people brave enough to learn a new language and apply them at work. Do not be afraid to let your colleagues know when you're struggling to find the right word, when you're finding it difficult to keep up with a conversation, or when you're confused about what was decided during a meeting. Asking for help is a great way to continue building your own skills, and it might even allow native English speakers to adjust their communication style in order to help you thrive. And let's be honest, people like to help. They don't say it, but they do. Secondly, asking for help might look a lot like working with a professional language coach to speed up that learning process and help you master business English or technical English faster. And as a former engineer myself and a current language expert, I really strive to support my clients as they work towards a functional understanding and mastery of technical English in order to thrive specifically in the workplace. And I know just how difficult it can be to put language skills to use in a professional business setting. I know that because I live in the Netherlands. Dutch is not my mother language. I had to learn Dutch. I have to use it in a professional business setting because I'm running my business here. I know how difficult it can be to talk about all that stuff in a language that is not your mother language. And at times, you feel like a little child talking. But believe me, it's getting better. Just stick to your language learning routines. It's getting better. And I have worked hard and created plans and solutions and courses to help you improve. And investing in a coach to strengthen your language journey and help you reach your goals is one of the most effective ways to ask for help. And I'd be honored to help you succeed. So tip number 4. That might be my favorite. And I'm still doing it. I think that's the only language learning thing that I do on a daily basis still. Tip number 4. Sit tight. You focus? Do you listen? Okay, here it comes. Watch content that helps you learn. Or in other words, watch TV. Isn't that great? So for many people, learning the English language, a popular method of practice is to watch reality TV. Sometimes that's called trash TV. This is helpful to learners because it gives you a good idea of how English sounds and looks in a casual, everyday conversation, including relationships, friendships, and so on. However, as a professional seeking to master your business English, technical English, for use in your workplace, trash TV might not be the best place to find inspiration or understanding of how English should be utilized or used. And why? Because it is very likely not to be professional, technical, or even appropriate. So instead of relying on reality TV, seek out media that aligns with your role or your goals. For example, there's a list of the 15 best TV shows for engineers. And for this podcast, that is the link that I'm going to post at the episode description. So I'm gonna link a list with the 15 best TV shows for engineers, including How Is It Made, Mythbusters, Sherlock, Mega Factories, and more. And by watching shows like this, you can get a better idea of what conversations sound like between professionals when discussing things like construction, results, data, and engineering. And while not all shows offer a perfectly accurate representation of science when used in engineering roles, it will provide you with some entertainment while at the same time strengthening your ability to keep up with conversations, pick up on cultural signs or clues, and master technical terms along the way. My favorites are, you probably know, I'm a Trekkie. I really like Star Trek and Sherlock. That's my go-to shows. Even good for different accents. Tip number 5, last but not least. Leverage resources to solidify your skills. Doesn't that sound fancy? It's nothing else than use what you have. So while I would love to personally help everybody looking to strengthen their technical English abilities, I know not everyone has space in their schedule to allow for a one-on-one coaching or one-on-one learning programs. And as much as I would love to, there aren't enough hours in a day to be able to support everyone around the world through one-on-one coaching. So whether you're looking for one-on-one coaching programs or a regular newsletter delivered to your email inbox and packed with tips to help you succeed, or if you're looking for courses or for a comprehensive blog post covering a wide range of topics, you can find it all online, where I look forward to virtually meeting you and helping you thrive however I can. Just have a look at my website, marcoda.org, and see what you can find that will help you further on. So that was it for today, my friends. This was, again, English for Engineers. If there's one thing you should remember from that episode, watch more TV, watch it in English, and change your subtitles to English as well. Okay, but now for real, that was it for today, my friends. This was English for Engineers. I'm your host, Olivia Augustin. Talk to you soon.